Loved gardening, which was a passion they shared with me, especially since I couldn't be as active as before. Living close to them meant that Tyler and I could visit often, which was a comfort given my limited mobility. Our relationship, though loving, was tested by my condition and Tyler's carelessness with finances. Despite his carefree attitude towards money, our love had always managed to keep us bound together. However, on the day of our anniversary, everything took a dark turn that tested us beyond what I thought possible. We had planned a simple celebration at a local park, a spot where we had spent many of our early dates. Tyler had insisted on pushing my wheelchair to the park himself. As we approached a steep hill near the park, Tyler, distracted by his phone, let go of my wheelchair. It started to roll down the hill, and I heard him shout from behind, trying to catch up. "You better get out of that wheelchair fast or you're gonna die." Tyler's voice was desperate but strangely cheerful, as if he couldn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation. Panic surged through me as I frantically reached for the brakes, my hands slipping in my haste. I could feel anger boiling inside me, not just from the fear of the immediate danger but from the accumulation of all the small negligences Tyler had shown over the years. As I struggled, the wheelchair seemed unstoppable. My anger grew, mingled with a sharp sadness at how our anniversary had turned into a nightmare. Just as I felt all hope was lost, the wheel caught on something, I didn't see what, and I was violently thrown from the wheelchair. I heard a loud crash behind me, and then everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a hospital room. The bright white lights blurred into the edges of my vision as I tried to orient myself. Turning my head, I saw Tyler in the bed next to mine, his face buried in his hands, crying. It was a rare sight. Tyler was not one to show his emotions so openly. After a moment, he noticed I was awake and attempted a weak smile. "Amy, you're okay." "I'm so glad," he stammered, his voice choked with emotion. He began to explain, his words tumbling out in a frantic, disjointed mess. I got hit by a car there, and my leg. As he pulled back the blanket, I saw it for the first time, Tyler, with one leg amputated below the knee. The sight shocked me, filling me with a tumultuous mix of sympathy and renewed frustration. Here we were, both broken in our own ways. "Hey, you're gonna help me right, aren't we married?" Tyler asked, his usual playful tone tinged with a hint of desperation. It was clear he was trying to find some normalcy in our altered reality. But in that moment, overwhelmed by my emotions and the recent trauma, I found myself saying, "I refuse." Tyler looked at me, dumbfounded, not understanding the depth of my feelings. "Who's gonna help, huh?" he asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and hurt. I knew I needed to express everything that had been building up inside me for too long. "Tyler, I love you, but I can't ignore everything that's happened. We need to talk, really talk, about everything." My voice was firm, resolute, even as my heart ached for both our losses. The conversation that would follow would undoubtedly be one of the hardest of our lives. Tyler's latest remark was the last straw for me. His inability to recognize the hard work of others, especially someone helping to manage our household, was deeply frustrating. "Tyler, do you really believe that someone should work without being compensated? That's not just unfair, it's exploitative," I responded sharply, my voice laced with anger. He looked surprised by my vehement reaction, perhaps realizing too late that his casual dismissiveness was not just offensive but also revealing a darker side of his mindset, one that seemed to have grown more prevalent since my accident. "But Amy, it's just housework," he attempted to justify, his tone somewhat defensive. "Just housework? Tyler, to you it may seem trivial because you don't have to deal with it, but it's essential and it's work. It deserves respect and fair payment. The way she does things might be different, but she is thorough and careful, and I value her help," I retorted, feeling a mix of exasperation and disappointment. His face tightened, a sign that he was upset but possibly beginning to understand the point I was making. It was clear that our views on many things had diverged, not just about housework, but about basic values and respect. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in our house grew tense. Tyler's dissatisfaction with our household helper was just one of many issues that seemed to highlight how far apart we had grown. His constant talk of inheritance and finances since my disability began had already put a strain on our relationship, and now his disrespect for someone I considered part of our extended household was adding to the strain. Despite this, I continued to find solace in my conversations with the housekeeping service provider. The older woman, whose name was Mrs. Jennings, had become a friend and confidant. During our tea breaks, I found comfort in our discussions about life, art, and sometimes the trivialities of everyday existence. It was during one of these breaks that I opened up more about my struggles. "Mrs. Jennings, I'm finding it increasingly difficult to understand Tyler. He wasn't always like this. We used to share everything, enjoy our time together. Now, it feels like he sees me more as a burden or an investment rather than his wife," I confessed, the words spilling out amidst the steam from our tea. Mrs. Jennings listened intently, her expression one of understanding. "Amy, it's tough, but sometimes people show their true colors during hardships. It's not the challenges that define us, but how we handle them. And you, my dear, are handling yours with grace and strength," she replied, her voice soothing. Her words were a balm to my troubled thoughts, giving me a measure of peace in the chaos that seemed to surround my relationship with Tyler. As we continued talking, I realized that while I was trying to adapt to my new life in a wheelchair, Tyler was still grappling with the changes in his own way. Maybe he was scared, or maybe he was just selfish. Either way, I knew that we needed to have a serious conversation about our future, our real future, not just finances or inheritances. I decided then that it was time to address everything openly with Tyler, to see if there was a way forward for us, or if the chasm between our values and expectations had grown too wide to bridge. Understood, I'll continue from where the story left off, expanding more on the details and maintaining the narrative without concluding remarks. Tyler's suggestion to visit the botanical garden for the cherry blossoms took me by surprise. The past few months had been filled with minimal communication, each interaction more strained than the last. His proposal seemed like an attempt to bridge the growing gap between us, but I was cautious. The weight of our unresolved issues lay heavily between us, making his cheerful demeanor seem almost out of place. "Cherry blossoms, huh?" I echoed, my tone laced with skepticism yet tinged with a sliver of hope. It had been a long time since we'd done something purely for the enjoyment of each other's company. Despite my reservations, the idea of returning to something as simple and beautiful as watching the cherry blossoms felt like a breath of fresh air. "Sure, Tyler, let's go see the cherry blossoms," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The prospect of spending time together without the immediate pressure of household tensions or financial discussions was appealing. I wondered if this could be a step towards understanding each other again, or at least a momentary escape from the ongoing discord. As we planned our outing, I could see Tyler's mood lift. He seemed genuinely excited about the trip, a stark contrast to the discontent that had characterized his recent demeanor. "It's been a while since we just talked, you know? I miss that," he said, almost wistfully. I nodded, acknowledging his sentiment. "I miss that too," I admitted, allowing myself a moment of vulnerability. Our relationship had once been built on a strong foundation of mutual respect and shared interests, particularly our love for nature and the outdoors. On the day of our visit to the botanical garden, the weather was perfect. The sky was a clear blue, and the air was crisp, heralding the arrival of spring. As we walked among the blooming cherry trees, their petals floating gently around us like pink snow, the beauty of the scene struck me. It was a poignant reminder of the simpler times we had shared before life had become so complicated. Tyler seemed more relaxed than he had been in months, pointing out different varieties of cherry trees and recounting stories from our earlier visits to the garden. I listened, contributing my own memories, feeling a slow thaw in the frosty silence that had settled between us. However, beneath the pleasant exchange, my mind was still preoccupied with our unresolved issues. Tyler's recent behavior, particularly regarding the financial pressures and his disregard for the contributions of others, couldn't be easily forgotten. The disparity in our handling of finances, his dismissive attitude towards the household help, and his unsettling comments about inheritance were all issues that needed addressing. As we sat on a bench under the canopy of blossoming branches, I knew that this was a temporary peace. "Tyler, we need to talk about everything that's been happening," I said, turning to face him. "We can't just ignore our problems and hope they go away." Tyler looked at me, his expression serious for the first time that day. "I know, Amy. I know we've got a lot to sort out. Let's just enjoy today, and we'll tackle everything head-on tomorrow. I promise we'll figure it out together." The reassurance in his voice was comforting, yet I remained cautious. Promises had been made and broken before. Today, I would enjoy the peace and beauty of the cherry blossoms, but tomorrow, I would need more than promises. I would need real changes and a commitment from Tyler that our relationship, with all its complexities, was still worth fighting for. Never bothered to check his account himself, trusting that it would somehow manage itself. He had always been this way, a trait I used to find endearingly carefree but now saw as recklessly negligent. "Tyler, this isn't just about the money," I said, my voice calm despite the turmoil swirling inside me. "It's about trust, responsibility, and respect, things you've been taking for granted." Tyler, looking visibly shaken by my confrontation, tried to compose himself. "Amy, I know I've messed up," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "I was so caught up in everything, the money, the stress. I didn't think." I listened, my arms folded, not ready to soften just yet. "It's not just about thinking, Tyler. It's about doing the right thing. You pushed me down a hill, whether out of desperation or something else. I was in danger because of you," I continued, my voice growing firmer. The weight of my words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Tyler's eyes darted away, unable to meet mine. "I know, and I'm sorry, really sorry. I don't know what got into me. I panicked, thought about the insurance, and it was stupid, really stupid," he stammered, trying to explain his unthinkable actions. I sighed deeply, feeling the gravity of our situation. "Sorry doesn't change what happened, Tyler. It doesn't change the fact that I could have been seriously hurt, or worse. And now, here we are, both of us in a hospital," I pointed out, the reality of our predicament settling in. Tyler nodded slowly, his usual vibrant demeanor diminished. "I know, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I'll sort out the finances, the house, everything. I want to fix this, Amy. I want us to go back to how things were," he pleaded, his voice desperate. "How things were," I repeated, mulling over his words. It seemed like a distant memory, a time when we were happy and carefree, before my illness, before the financial strains, and certainly before this dreadful incident. "Tyler, going back isn't possible. We can't undo what's been done, but we can decide how to move forward," I said, my tone resolute yet not without a hint of sadness. "I need time to think, to figure out if I can trust you again. And you need to prove that you can be the partner I once believed you were." Tyler nodded, the seriousness of the situation finally sinking in. "I understand, Amy. Take all the time you need. I'll start by sorting out our finances and making sure everything at home is in order. I'll do everything I can," he promised, a flicker of the old Tyler in his eyes. As I lay back on my hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, I contemplated our future. The road to recovery, both physical and relational, would be long and uncertain. Yet, as I considered Tyler's words and his commitment to change, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild, to create a new foundation stronger than before. But it would take time, honesty, and a lot of hard work from both of us. Watched quietly as Tyler's emotions spiraled into chaos over the phone. His usually composed demeanor was shattered into pieces, his face contorting with each revelation from the other end of the line. As he shouted into his phone, a part of me felt vindicated in seeing him finally face the consequences of his actions, yet another part felt deeply saddened by the sheer magnitude of betrayal and confusion we both were experiencing. "Yes, I'm telling you, she told me it's your child," Tyler yelled, pressing the phone against his ear, trying desperately to catch every word. The denial in his voice was palpable, mixed with a sense of desperation to cling to any strand of normalcy or truth he might still have in this convoluted situation. On the other end, I could hear muffled responses, the voice of his affair partner attempting to placate him, perhaps, or maybe even continuing the deceit. Tyler's face went from red to pale as the conversation progressed, each sentence striking him like a physical blow. "I don't understand." "Are you sure?" "But we." "How could you?" His questions spilled out, tangled and disjointed. Finally, he ended the call, the phone slipping slightly from his grasp as he looked up at me, his eyes searching for some kind of solace or explanation. "You see, Tyler, all these years, you've been living a lie," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Not just with her, but with us. Our marriage, our attempts to start a family, your secret dealings, everything was based on mistruths and secrets." Tyler sank back, his eyes glazed over, processing the enormity of his mistakes. "Amy, I don't know what to say. I really thought the child was mine. And us. I never wanted to hurt you," he stammered, his voice breaking. "The truth is, Tyler, while you were busy with your secrets, I was fighting my own battles. Not just with my illness and the wheelchair, but with the reality of our marriage crumbling under secrets and lies," I continued, the years of pent-up frustration and disappointment making my voice steady and piercing. "I had to know the truth. That's why I hired the detective. Not to trap you, but to free myself from this web of lies you've spun around us. And about the child," I paused, choosing my words carefully, "I was devastated to learn about your infidelity, but learning that the child might not even be yours? That was another level of deceit." Tyler looked down, unable to meet my gaze. His shoulders slumped, a gesture of defeat and remorse. "I'm sorry, Amy. I've messed up everything. Our love, our life, your trust. I don't know if there's any way to make this right." "You're right, Tyler. I don't know if things can be made right again, but I do know that we need to address this head-on. We need transparency and honesty if there's ever going to be any chance of reconciliation or closure," I replied. Tyler nodded slowly, the weight of the situation finally settling in. "What do you need from me?" "How do we start fixing this?" he asked, his voice low and hesitant. "First, we need complete honesty. No more secrets, no more lies. We discuss everything openly and figure out where we stand. From financial issues to our personal feelings, everything needs to be on the table," I stated, setting the foundation for what I knew would be a long and difficult conversation. As we both sat there, amidst the ruins of our shattered expectations, a painful yet necessary dialogue began. It was clear that the path to healing or parting ways would be complicated, but it was a path we needed to tread, step by step, with as much honesty and courage as we could muster. Tyler's face twisted in confusion and remorse as he watched my father-in-law's emotional display. His earlier anger seemed to drain away, replaced by a dawning realization of the full extent of his actions. As my father-in-law's tears fell onto the hospital bed, Tyler's gaze shifted between him and me, a mix of guilt and bewilderment clouding his features. "You see what your actions have caused?" I continued, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. "You've not only betrayed me, but you've brought pain to people who cared about you. People who stood by you. My father trusted you, Tyler, and you've let him down as much as you've let me down." Tyler swallowed hard, his mouth opening and closing as if he were searching for words that could somehow mend the irreparable. "Amy, I don't know what I can even say to you or your dad. I'm so sorry, truly. I've ruined everything," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. My father-in-law stepped closer, his face still red with anger, but his voice softening as he addressed Tyler. "You were like a son to me, Tyler. I supported you, defended you, because I believed you were the best thing that happened to Amy. But now, seeing what you've done, how you've acted, it's indefensible." Tyler looked down, unable to meet my father-in-law's gaze. "I know, sir. I've messed up in ways I never imagined possible. I don't expect forgiveness, I just..." I hope, somehow, Amy can find happiness, whether that's with or without me. I watched the exchange, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and sadness. Tyler's acknowledgement of his faults was necessary, but it didn't erase the pain he had caused. Tyler, acknowledging your mistakes is a step, but it's just the first of many you'll need to take. Right now, I need space and time to heal. To think about what I want for my future, which I'm not sure includes you anymore. Tyler nodded, his eyes red and watery. I understand, Amy. Take all the time you need. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, if it's even possible. And I'll start by making sure you don't have to worry about the finances or the legal issues regarding the divorce. As the conversation drew to a close, my father-in-law put his hand on my shoulder, offering a silent form of support. Amy, whatever you decide, I'm here for you. You're my daughter, and I just want you to be safe and happy. I turned to look at him, grateful for his steadfast support. Thank you, Dad. That means everything to me right now. Tyler finally stood, taking a deep breath as he prepared to leave the room. I'll go now. I'll start sorting things out and make sure everything is ready for whatever decision you make. As he left, the room felt simultaneously emptier and more peaceful. I was left with a lot to process, a future to consider, and decisions to make. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity about what needed to be done. The path wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary to move forward from the wreckage of a relationship built on deception and betrayal. The revelation from the doctor shattered the last remnants of trust one had in Tyler. His tears, while perhaps genuine, were too late to excuse his actions or to garner any sympathy from me. The motive he confessed to was so petty and selfish that it felt like a blow to my very soul. All this time, my life had been restricted, not by the immutable fate of an illness, but by Tyler's insecurities and manipulations. I stared at Tyler, feeling a mix of disbelief and fury. You kept me in this wheelchair because you were afraid I'd leave you? That I'd live a fuller life than you? My voice cracked, the enormity of his betrayal sinking in. His confession wasn't just about lying, it was about controlling my life, my mobility, and my independence out of his own fear and jealousy. Tyler wiped his eyes, his voice tremulous. I thought if you were dependent on me, you wouldn't find a reason to leave. If you were always home, you'd need me. His words were a desperate attempt to explain his indefensible actions, but they only served to deepen the chasm between us. Need you? I echoed, my voice icy. For what? To be trapped? To be less than I am capable of being? You chose to imprison me in a situation based on your insecurities. How could you think that's love? How could you think I'd ever stay with you after finding out? My father-in-law stepped forward, his face a mask of anger and disappointment. You've not only lied to Amy, but you've taken choices away from her based on your own selfish fears, he barked at Tyler. This isn't love, it's control. And I won't stand by and watch my daughter suffer because of it. Tyler looked from me to my father-in-law, the realization that he had lost both of us dawning on him. His face was a picture of loss and regret, but the damage was irrevocable. The doctor, who had been quietly observing the emotional exchange, interjected gently, Amy, we should focus on your treatment plan now. There's a lot of work to do in terms of rehabilitation, but the prognosis is good. You have a chance to regain your independence. I nodded, wiping away tears. Thank you, doctor. I want to start as soon as possible. Turning away from Tyler, I addressed the doctor, determined to reclaim my life and my autonomy. As the doctor began to outline the rehabilitation process, Tyler made a move to speak, but my father-in-law's stern gaze silenced him. There was nothing he could say to amend the situation. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with the consequences. The doctor finished his explanations and left the room, leaving me with my father-in-law and a quietly sobbing Tyler. I turned to my father-in-law, who put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. We'll get through this, Amy. You're stronger than you know, and you're not alone, he said, his voice steady and supportive. I nodded, feeling a newfound strength buoyed by his support. I know, Dad. And thank you. Tyler's presence in the room had become almost inconsequential, his sobs a background noise to the sense of empowerment I felt. Today marked the end of my involuntary confinement, not just from the wheelchair, but from a relationship that had stifled and manipulated me. It was time to move forward, to heal, and to rediscover my strength and independence. As I settled into my new room, the absence of Tyler's presence felt like a breath of fresh air. It was quiet, a solitude that I hadn't realized I had been craving so deeply. The weight of the past months, the deceit, the manipulation, it all seemed to gradually lift off my shoulders in this new space. I was alone, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. The next morning, the doctor came to my room as promised to discuss the details of the surgery. His presence brought a sense of hope and professionalism that contrasted sharply with the personal turmoil I had been experiencing. "Good morning, Amy. Are you ready to discuss your surgery and rehabilitation plan?" he asked with a warm, encouraging smile. "Yes, I am. Please, tell me everything," I responded, eager to understand what the future held for my recovery. The doctor laid out the surgical procedure, explaining how they would relieve the pressure on my spinal cord to restore blood flow and function to my legs. "The surgery has a high success rate, and considering your overall health and the specifics of your condition, I'm optimistic about your recovery," he explained. Listening to him, I felt a surge of hope. The possibility of walking again, of regaining my independence, was something I had almost given up on. "What kind of rehabilitation will I need after the surgery?" I asked, trying to grasp the full picture of what my recovery would entail. "It will be intensive at first," the doctor replied. "Physical therapy to strengthen your muscles, regain balance, and relearn walking movements. It's going to be challenging, but with your determination, I'm confident you'll make excellent progress." I nodded, mentally preparing myself for the journey ahead. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it, to fight for my autonomy and health. After the doctor left, I spent a lot of time thinking about my life, about the choices I had made, and the ones I was about to make. Despite the hardships, I felt a sense of clarity about my path forward. I was going to heal, to grow stronger, and to reclaim the parts of my life that Tyler had tried to steal from me. In the weeks that followed, as I underwent surgery and started my rehabilitation, I kept in touch with my father-in-law, who supported me every step of the way. His apologies and regrets over not seeing the truth sooner were heartfelt, and I forgave him, knowing he had been manipulated by Tyler just as much as I had. My recovery was tough, filled with pain and frustration, but also with triumphs as I took my first steps, then walked longer distances, and eventually regained full mobility. It was a testament to my resilience, a physical manifestation of my journey back from the darkness that Tyler had drawn me into. As for Tyler, I learned through my lawyer that he struggled greatly after our separation and the finalization of our divorce. He had to come to terms with his actions and their consequences alone, which I hoped would be a lesson for him in the end. Months later, standing on my own 2 feet, literally and metaphorically, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and freedom. I had come through a harrowing experience, but I emerged stronger, more independent, and ready to embrace whatever life had to offer next, free from the shadows of deceit that had once threatened to define my existence. Living under the strict supervision of my father-in-law was not exactly how I envisioned my life post-divorce. Tyler, my ex-husband, seemed to be hanging on to his clerical job, but rumors of our divorce leaked somehow, and now his colleagues, once concerned about his injury, are giving him the cold shoulder. It's hard not to think he brought it upon himself, especially when I hear him lamenting about his colleagues harassing him. Bitterly, I can't help but smile, realizing he hasn't changed a bit. Occasionally, I still meet my father-in-law, partly out of concern for Tyler's situation, but mostly because we share hobbies. At first, he appeared apologetic for the situation, but recently, he's reverted to his usual self. Upon investigation, it was revealed that Tyler's affair partner was married, and even had a child with her real husband. I couldn't ignore this injustice, so I sent the evidence of their affair and child support transfers to her husband. It seems he found out from the evidence I provided, sparking a huge dispute that ended in their divorce. A resentful letter arrived at the lawyer's office, but we ignored it. Meanwhile, I underwent surgery and spent 6 months in the hospital for physical therapy. Thanks to my father-in-law's arrangements, I could continue working from a private room. After discharge, with ongoing therapy and checkups, I can now walk with a cane. One recent addition to my routine is taking walks around the house. During one such walk, I stumbled over a rock, but a kind stranger helped me up. We exchanged contact information, and now we're planning to go out for a meal. His kindness and the exhilarating feeling of a new spring make my excitement unstoppable.